Before I offer my salutation, I want to remind this group that you are the most active participants in standards development. Good morning. Good morning. You are the most active members in global standards development. Good morning. Good morning. Very good. My name is Bob Bressani and I represent the GSMP team. I'd like to welcome you to your March 2014 event. I think we have a very interesting plenary scheduled for you. Melanie Noose will provide the welcome from GS1 US. Our leadership team will then join us. Miguel Lopera will talk about our strategy. Malcolm Bowden will talk about data quality. And Steve Brott will talk about standards and innovation. That will be followed by our keynote presentation by Chris Diorio on the resurgence of UHF RFID. Chris is the Chief Strategy and Technology Officer for Impinj. I will come back and give you a brief overview of our recent efforts with the Best in Class initiative. We'll close the plenary and we'll get back to doing the good work of GSMP. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Melanie Noose, Vice President, Apparel and General Merchandise for GS1 US. Melanie is responsible for leading the industry engagement strategy to drive broader adoption of GS1 standards and GS1 US solutions for the apparel and general merchandise industries. Melanie has been working with retail supply chains for 20 years. Prior to joining GS1 US, she was the Director of Retail Industry Marketing at GXX. I'd like to introduce Melanie Noose.
Thanks, Bob. Welcome to the ATL, y'all. We're so excited to have you here. I have to just tell you in advance, I give all props to Ms. Gina Morgan, my local expert. She helped me put together a really compelling set of information for you this morning, not necessarily including this part. So let's get the business out of the way. You're all active in the development of standards, so I think that you clearly understand our goal is to be the global language of business, and we focus on 3 key areas: identify, capture, and share. And the goal is to provide anyone information wherever they are, whatever business process they're trying to optimize. We're going to be the foundation to make that successful. And really, if you look at our history and our focus on the business-to-business space, we talk about things like visibility, efficiency, security, accuracy, collaboration. But we've really shifted our focus in recent years to incorporate consumers, because as you all know, most everything that we do touches a consumer in some way, whether that's in a retail environment, in a healthcare environment, the way we move product, and how we get things to those end users. So we're also trying to provide things like convenience, value, safety, and ultimately satisfaction for our consumers. We've all been spending the last several months celebrating, talking about, and marketing our 40-year anniversary. I think it's very exciting to note. I've even put a reminder in my Outlook calendar that on June 26th is the actual day that the Wrigley scum first crossed the scanner at the Marshall Supermarket in Ohio. So I'm going to chew some juicy fruit in honor of that on June 26th. Celebrate with a little sugar, why not? And what we do in industry engagement, I think what you all do in the standards development work as well, is to say, right, we're not solutions in search of problems. We actually want to understand, what does the industry's need? How do we gather as a group? Let's bring the collective voice together, determine what the requirements are, and come up with the best way to deliver a solution to the marketplace. So I think we've, over the years, have put together a great suite, not only of standards, but also practical implementation advice. Guidelines are the critical piece. In the US apparel and general merchandise space, that's what my users constantly tell me. The standards are only as good as our ability to implement. So the work that you guys do in providing the practical business application for how standards can be efficiently leveraged is critical to ensuring that we get the mass adoption that we want for everybody in the industry. I think you saw in the video some of these slides, and I know yesterday was highlighted in our session, right? 5 billion GS1 barcodes scanned per day, which Rich Richardson tells me is more than Google searches every day. Yeah, so hey, we're up there with Google. That's a pretty great accomplishment. But also that we've got over 13 million products registered in the Global Data Synchronization Network, so it continues to grow and show its value. On the GS1 US side, we're committed to delivering the standards as a key component of improving business process. So we focus, much like the global office and the rest of the member organizations, we focus on target sectors, key business needs, and our strategy really is a five-fold strategy around improving the customer experience, and that would be both for the business customers, the members of our organization, as well as for the end consumers who benefit from standards every day. We also have a strong focus on leveraging our solution partner network. We have found that they're the experts in technology. So impressed today that Impinj is going to be sharing with us. They're one of our solution partners in the US as well. The Data Quality Foundation. So data quality is something that we talk about at GS1, and we've been working very diligently at it for many years. But in the US, last year alone, Angela Fernandez, my counterpart, and Mary Wilson, they stood up a data quality work group. They put a leadership team in place, and they have multi-sector support and nearly 150 companies participating in an active effort to really get our arms around data quality and improve what we do and how we move information between our organizations. B2B2C, I think, as you all know, is a critical focus of our organization as well as the global organization, and you've probably heard some about that yesterday. We had a great session on digital, and there's more to come. And then, of course, culture and capabilities, which is the internal focus at GS1 US, to build up our team of associates and personnel, create a strong industry-based leadership, and also provide guidance and develop a strong strategic direction with member input. Okay, so business is out of the way. Now let's talk about some fun stuff. If you've spent any time at all in Atlanta, you probably have been confused by the whole Peachtree concept. I am so thankful that GPS systems have come a long way, because I've gotten lost many times in this city. But I would just want to let you know, Peachtree is not named after a peach tree, although, right, the peach has become an everlasting symbol of the state of Georgia. That in fact, there were Native Americans who had built settlements, and they had something called a pitch tree. It was a lone tree next to a creek where the settlement was put in place. And so somehow in the translation, pitch tree became peach tree, and that's why we now have over 71 streets. And if you ever want to get stuck in an endless loop, just, you know, go looking for them all. The world's busiest airport. You know, I don't know that I ever really believed this, because I think a lot of airports might claim that, but in fact, the passenger terminal complex at Atlanta International Airport is the equivalent of over 45 football fields. Having been there, ridden the train, walked the terminals, I would agree that it's a rather large and busy, and of course it's the home of Delta Airlines, and a very convenient place to travel to and from. Some very important people come from Atlanta. Of course, on the left of the screen, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the leader of the Civil Rights Movement, our 39th President of the United States, and very famous for his love of peanuts, Jimmy Carter. So this is one of only 2 cities that has 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners. But there's a couple of other interesting facts about Atlanta. It's the 3rd city in the nation for Fortune 500 headquarter companies to be based here. CNN, which is probably the largest news network in the world, the US base is here in Atlanta. Of course, that was started by Ted Turner, who did a lot for media. And they also call Atlanta the Hollywood of the South. Last year alone, over 300 film and TV productions took place in Atlanta. So very busy and thriving city. Probably the most famous thing that happened in Atlanta recently. Gina was originally calling this Snowmageddon, but she did confirm with me that the final term that the media settled on was Snowpocalypse. It was an overwhelming 3 inches of snow and ice. Any of us who are from the north, like Denver, sure, 3 inches. But it did literally bring the city to a grinding halt. People abandoned their cars, people slept in their cars, there were school buses full of children all over the news. It was really kind of the most horrible thing. But Southern hospitality, y'all. There were people who stepped up. This sign, if you can't read it, says free hot chocolate. So we're so thankful for the Good Samaritans that in our time of need as a city, people came forward to support us. Well, thank you so much. I hope you all have learned a little bit about Atlanta. I look forward to working with you the rest of the week and continuing the good work of standards.
Thank you, Melanie. Well done. I think there were a lot of common themes in your business part of your presentation, and it's a great segue to introduce our leadership team, Miguel Lopera, Malcolm Bowden, and Steve Brett.
Good morning to everybody. So welcome to Atlanta, welcome to GSMP, and thank you very much to GS1 US and Melanie and your team for facilitating this event. So the first thing that I would like to see, because I see a broad audience, could you please raise your hands, all the people who are attended this GSMP for the first time? Can I see them? Thank you very, very much to all of you, and thank you also to all the faces that we have seen. We have been in GSMP for quite a number of years, so welcome to everybody. And what I'm going to give you is just a brief update about the key project that we have in GS1 this year, which is the strategy. You know, the GS1, and when I talk GS1, I talk GS1, MOs, global office, and all the stakeholders working with us. The reality is that the organization is doing extremely well. There are very few organizations that have the track record of growing as we are doing it, and providing and increasing our services every year. And so the question is, why do you change your strategy if you are successful? And the answer to the question is we have to adapt to the realities. And there is nothing better than adapting to the realities when you are successful. So in the next slide that I have, which is the summary, and probably you have seen it several times, these are the areas that we have chosen as key strategic areas in which we want to do several things. Now, there are 6, but the question is, what is the essence of why are we doing what is the fundamental thing that why we have to do the change? And I would say, oversimplifying, there are 2 or 3 things which I consider fundamental. I think that the first one is the impact that the digital world is having in businesses and in consumers, and the expectations from businesses and consumers. This is the first one. The second one, which is not here, and we have made an analysis at GS1, and it's a reality, which is the increasing number of regulations that are affecting the businesses in which we are operating. If you look at some of the key projects that we have in each of the sectors, in one way or another, they are driven by regulations that are starting to appear across the world. Just think for a second, we are going to dedicate quite a number of time to NGPI. The root of NGPI was the regulation in Europe about digital label for online shopping. Think about healthcare, UDI. This is going to be a fundamental project across the world. Both projects are born in different regions, but this subject of regions is blurring every day more, because manufacturing is going across the globe. And this is having an impact. This is having an impact on GS1. And why? Because your expectations as users, your expectations as MOs serving a lot of local companies or companies, regional companies, is that business processes should be, I would say, not the same, but quite aligned, so we can have real global standards. And I think one of our responsibilities as GS1 is to facilitate the process, educate regulators, work with associations to make sure that regulations across the world, they look the same, so companies can operate with a single process for many of those business processes in which there is not a real competitive advantage. So don't forget about this, because in the pipeline, the new regulations are growing more and more. And as a result of this, the entrance on the digital world, moving from just the business to business to the business to consumer, extending, as we say, and regulations, I think this is going to demand that GS1, it becomes even more interdependent. Again, the boundaries, the regions are blurring. And we need to respond to this request of developing global standard and setting the basis for services that in some cases will be local or regional, but that will facilitate what your companies are doing. So for me, this is the basis, and later Steve and Malcolm are going to touch some of the fundamental elements, just reminding you that we want to have a single global mission, a vision, and branding as an organization. That number 2 is focus on data quality, as Melanie mentioned, is going to be across all DMOs in the next years. That sectors, we are going to focus more on certain sectors. And the important thing here, I think the change versus the past, is that we are going to put together the plans of the key countries just to see opportunities for synergies and leverage a lot of the entrepreneurship and the local services that are so successful in some of the countries. Then Steve is going to talk about digital and innovation. I think that what is coming in the area of innovation is something that we have not been very proactive, and it's an expectation of the whole community. And last but not least is about organization. Is how can we make that the GS1, with all operating in each of the countries with a lot of independence, and this is good because this is the basis for entrepreneurship. In those projects in which we need to be global, we just always speak with one voice, we have one vision and act as one organization. So this is a brief summary of the strategy, and I always finish with the same. The core of GS1 is that we develop global standards. The day that we forget about this, is going to be a matter of years that GS1 will disappear. And the standards are led by this community, by the GSMP community. So our expectations is that you continue playing this critical role. You users, you MOs representing the local users, you have to work together for the next generation and for the maintenance of support of our standards. And we really value your contribution. And I know that there are many other such sexy projects that we are touching, digital and so on, are also part of GSMP. But let's not forget that the basis of GS1, the basis is the development of global standard, and you are the people allowing this. So thank you very much. And what I hope is that we have a lot of progress this week, and together with this, that you strengthen the connection with all your colleagues, and also you have a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miguel. You can tell how global we are that we've had 3 accents already in the first 4 speakers. But my name is Malcolm Bowden. I look after global solutions. So I can stand here and talk to you about traceability, visibility. As long as it ends in itty, it belongs to me. But what I want to talk about is quality, to mention another one. It's been mentioned already, and I'd like to just take you through a part of our data quality strategy for this year. So data quality itself, it's really 2 functions. I know there are more, but it has to be correct, and the data has to be complete. The data could be absolutely correct if there was nothing in it, but it wouldn't be quite complete. So basically, we also have to align this with business cases. Because if I look at the GDSN and we look at the Global Data Dictionary, trying to get all of that data right is boiling the ocean. We've tried to do that, I think, in the past, and what we have to do is to focus down on some particular business use cases and say the data is complete and the data is accurate to support those business use cases. So really, I'm only going to talk about product data. Again, we have other registries, we have other information within GS1. But if we just look at what we do about synchronizing product information, traditionally, we were in the B2B space, as we've said before. So we're looking at the use case of new product introduction. If you come out with a product, you have to list it. You have to list it with sellers. So therefore, there's a set of data which we should focus on to ensure that that data is complete and correct. The second one is around physical comparison. We all know that problems in the supply chain are caused by inaccurate height, width, depth, weight, etc. So we are also going to provide a service which allows comparison between data that was put in and data is measured again, so we can see how accurate that data is. And the third one moves us into the area that we've talked about a lot, which is traditionally the last time a barcode was scanned was at the checkout. We've now moved past the checkout. The product is in the consumer's hands, and the data that we used to use just for B2B is now being extended into B2C. Miguel's already mentioned, this is driven by regulation often. The one that we talk about quite often is EU 1169. So that's an EU regulation that basically talks about product information on label and also says that data has to be the same on the package. I popped those up knowing you couldn't read them, because simply it means by December 2014, what you have on the jam jar better be on the website. The idea being the consumer can order online and they don't have the benefit of the product in their hand. When we're shopping in store, we read the ingredients, we look at the nutrition, we can make a decision. If you shop online, the EU is now saying that at the point of purchase, the consumer shopping online should have the same information as a consumer shopping and having the product in their hand. That's a big problem. So we're trying to solve that problem. We've got three basic strategies we're going to use. The first one is, let's get it right at the source. There are brands in this room. We have the data quality framework. We're going to simplify that framework. We're going to actually boil it down into the use cases that I mentioned before, and we're going to offer training in all of the major MOs that we can work with brands to implement a simplified data quality framework. That's the first one. The second one is, again, in these major MOs, we're either going to develop or partner with companies who can help to get that data right. Best practice has shown us that the best data is generally in countries where there are third-party providers who do the gathering of the information, the measurement and the weighing of the product on behalf of brands. And the third one is, you can't improve it if you can't measure it. So we need to measure and monitor the results. So on that one, we've deployed a web services solution on behalf of GS1, where data can be sent to it, and you will then get results which will tell you about how accurate the data is, whether or not it's complete for these use cases, and that can then be used to go back to the brands and work with them to get this data correct. So we've deployed that service already. And brands can also benchmark them against best practice. So they can look at what's the average in this industry, how am I doing against that? So we feel that with being able to work with the brands, work with the retailers on own label, and come back with some real qualitative data, we can actually drive the quality up. I think one thing I'd like to say is that if we don't get this right, there's a legacy that we'll all have in this room. We'll be remembered as the people who transferred rubbish at the speed of light. And on that basis, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I wish you luck with all your data quality exercises. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. My name is Steve Brott. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and President of Standards Development and EPC Global at GS1 Global Office. GS1 and innovation, or maybe I should say GS1 and innovation? What are we talking about here? Certainly through innovation, and also because of standardization, the world has changed dramatically since that first pack of Wrigley's gum was scanned 40 years ago in Ohio. And certainly, it's not always easy to predict what innovations are coming in the future, right? It's very difficult. In fact, experts and geniuses frequently get this wrong. But is there a way that this organization, and I'm not talking about a bunch of eggheads in a room, I'm talking about the whole community, that we can somehow improve our visibility, not just into the past, but into the future? And I'm going to show you a little video now, and when you watch that, think about, first of all, those questions. What is GS1's role with innovation? How's tomorrow going to be different? And are we ready for it? Thanks to eBay for letting us borrow that video, but I think it's really inspirational to me. It certainly shows the trends. It focuses on the digital world, of course, but you see the trends of emerging economies, an aging population, the use of mobile devices. These are all things that are trends that we can look to the future on, and the reason we started our digital program was largely about that, about the core of GS1's business, basically commerce. using technologies that GS1 really hasn't been using. So I really encourage you to participate. I guess some of you did participate yesterday in the digital session. We have the new G10 on the web work group, which is our first of our new digital working groups starting. So I want to talk about even beyond digital. What can GS1 do to be ready to address the business challenges of tomorrow? So we can say, when I ask, are you ready? We can say, we think so. So we're preparing to launch what we're going to call the Business Technology Innovation Network. And you, everyone in this room, is an opportunity to be a part of that. It's going to be where what's needed, what the business needs, meet what's possible. And where we at least have a vision, or at least we believe we've surveyed the future landscape, and we're ready more ready to address the major business challenges that we see in the future, and have at our fingertips more closely the experts and the technologies needed to address those challenges. So just some sample challenges that have come up in discussions. Some of these challenges of the future are, of course, the same challenges we have today. But we're probably going to need faster inline printing, faster point-of-scale scanning, different kind of scanning, optical scanning. A lot of these things will be discussed in the NGPI work group. Supply chain integrity, sustainability, omni-channel. How's that going to change our world in the future? And also sample technologies, and right at the top of that list are existing GS1 technologies. In fact, our first groups in digital are about using existing GS1 standards for identification and attributes and event tracking, but in the digital world, the world of the web. But other technologies, social, you saw in the video. How about Internet of Things? Didn't GS1, at least the Auto ID Center, invent Internet of Things? Where is it on our radar today? Mobile. You're going to hear from Chris Diorio in a second about RFID, but what about other technologies like Wi-Fi, NFC, Bluetooth, big data? How about 3D printing? Again, it's talking about creating new products. How can the GS1 system help to pull together products with their designs, with the printers that are capable of printing them, with the ingredients needed to feed those printers to print those 3D objects? Some system of identification and attributes need to be developed to support that potentially groundbreaking and disruptive technology that's coming on very quickly. So, how's this all going to work? One thing we're going to do is leverage the experience, and especially the legacy, I think the early days of EPC Global, especially in the Auto ID Center, in addition to leveraging our entire community. So let me take you through a description of how this is going to work, and I want to preface this by the fact that this is what we're going to be presenting to our management board and General Assembly in May, and we hope that's the point where we will be able to say, let's go. Well, we've already started. Wink, wink. So the community are central to this. The wisdom of the crowd. Many of you read papers, you work in solution providers, you're developing next generation technologies. You have an awful lot of information. We need to make it easier to share that. Our member organizations, 111 member organizations on the ground in countries large and small, who have visibility into local problems that may start there and grow, maybe local problems that exist in multiple countries, but there's not a way of sharing information about that. You saw, as part of what Miguel presented on the strategy, the MO sharing of information, not only about what they're doing today, but about what they're seeing in the future, what new problems and maybe even new potential solutions are out there. These could come from countries large and small. Quite often, necessity is the mother of invention. And some of the big advances that are happening now in the internet world often start in places where they have few resources and they need to be more creative. How about the Auto ID labs? They're a little younger than that. But a collection of some of the world's most prestigious universities that we have at our fingertips. Are we taking maximum advantage of the brain power of not only those individuals who are connected to us now, but of their institutions? These people all have ideas, they have observations. They just need a place where these discussions can happen and ideas about business problems of the future and potential technology solutions can more effectively be made visible. Now, we also want to institute in the new plan more venues for pulling together people, like incubators, where we might take an idea that's not quite ready for standardization and just get a community together to needle on that idea a little bit longer until we get to the point where we have not only a good idea, but a large number of global institutions behind it. I'd like to see more workshops In my old organization at the World Wide Web Consortium, we had about 10 workshops a year, 2-day workshops, where we would get together experts, not just within inside our community, but more importantly almost, people from outside, to get together and talk about the state of a particular area. Could be 3D printing, for example. Get together those people together and have them talk about where is the need for standardization of the kinds of things that GS1 is quite good at. So out of those facilities, we'll have a whole bunch of ideas, but then we need a way to sort through them, to filter through them. And one of the biggest problems we could have is an overabundance of great ideas and no direction on prioritization. So we're proposing to repurpose what's now the EPC Global Board into a business technology innovation board that's going to be focusing not just on current technologies and adoption, but on 3 to 10 years out. Very important that we get a group of visionaries, people who are broad thinking, who have strong networks of people who can pull together the ideas coming out of our collective collaborative down at the bottom and filter those ideas down into some priorities for GS1 to consider. Some of these priorities may come back as new questions back into the community. They may say, we just finished this incredible white paper that you guys put together on 3D printing. Can you let us know now, MOs, what's happening on the ground in your countries, and are there industry people out there who really are looking for a need for standards across the 3D printing industry? But in the end, what we hope to produce is a regular business technology strategy, a set of recommendations that can go to GS1 for GS1 to take and use as part of future strategies like the one that Miguel just talked about. And of course, the experience of GS1 in terms of the standardization, in terms of the implementation, will feed back into this process as a whole. So that's how it's going to work. I'm really hoping that we'll have real people instead of cartoons in the real system. So think about that. I'd like you to get excited about this. I'd love to hear your ideas about how we can make this work. We're already setting up a social network platform based on Yammer, which is a business social network platform that we're starting to test already in some of our groups, including the new G10 on the web group. And I think that's going to be an interesting collaborative platform for helping to gel these ideas down at the bottom. But if you have any thoughts about this, please see me. I'll be here for the rest of the week. So, a lot else is happening within my group, the Standards and Systems Development Group, and I wish I could talk about all of it. Here's just a list of some of the things that are happening. Some of the work is updates to existing standards, a lot of work on new standards, interfacing with other standards bodies, creating new systems that Malcolm's team will be running at some point as part of our solutions. For example, GetPeer, a new GLN service, updates to GDSN, including the major release, and of course, new projects like the Next Generation Product ID and G10 on the web. I thank all of my colleagues in the room here and elsewhere who are working on all these projects, because we would not succeed without your support. Well, thank you very much.
So now is the time for our plenary, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Chris Diorio, who's founder and Chief Strategy and Technology Officer at Impinj. I'm sure many of you know Chris. He's also Associate Professor at the University of Washington. Received his PhD from Caltech, not a bad school. 30 years of experience in semiconductor radio engineering, more than 75 papers, 100 patents. It's been, especially in the area of UHF and RFID and UHF Gen 2, V2, he's been instrumental in the GSMP process and getting these very difficult standards done. And I've worked with him closely on this, and he is tireless, and it's just the kind of guy we need. He's got a whole suite of awards which you'll find in the program, one of which is the Distinguished Teaching Award. So now I'm going to welcome Professor Chris Diorio to the lectern, and he'll lead us in a discussion about the resurgence of UHF RFID. Thank you.
Am I up? Yes. Okay. So as Steve said, my name is Chris Diorio. I'm talking about the resurgence of UHF RFID. I can see fairly well back there despite the lights, so if people have questions as I'm going along, please wave your hands, raise your hands or something. Just ask as I go. There we go. So just a brief overview of the agenda. I'm going to start by talking about UHF RFID, past, where we came from, what we're doing today, and what the future is. And that progression will naturally lead into a discussion of the next generation protocol, which is UHF Gen 2 V2. So looking back in time, we ratified the original Gen 2 protocol in December of 2004. And here's the first UHF Gen 2 demonstration at the 2005 EPC Global US Conference. The demonstration was a plexiglass box with 40 tags on pieces of foam. There's a blower in the bottom of the box that would blow these tags around. There were readers on either side reading the tags. And the system was, and the demonstration was to show that we could read 40 tags moving quickly, that they didn't interfere with each other, and the readers didn't interfere with each other despite the fact that they were pointing at each other. And Sue Hutchison, some of you may know, had pulled one of the blocks out of the container without telling any of us. So the demo ran. We got 39, and all of us were scratching our heads, and then Sue conveniently came and dropped the last one in, and we got 40. And you can see me over to the right there with less gray hair and looking in the wrong direction. And I'll bet anything that it was Nick taking those pictures back then, too. Despite all the excitement back then, the market really went slow. In fact, I could say it sort of went nowhere. So I'm going to use tag volume as a proxy for market growth. Spec introduced December 2004, first products 2005. Everybody's excited, the whole industry's behind it, woohoo! And the next 5 years, it went nowhere. You can see all the way up to 2009, the total worldwide consumption of UHF RFID tags was less than 500 million units a year, which was way below anybody's projections. Back in 2005, there was going to be this hockey stick of growth, and it just didn't happen. Why? Well, back then, the industry was focused on tagging pallets and cases. We were going to re-engineer the efficiency of the global supply chain. It's sort of a tall order for a new technology, maybe a little bit too tall, and it was just difficult. The challenges were daunting. And you can sort of see what we were attempting to do back then. Off to the left here is a mock-up of the Walmart test case. In this particular test case, there's 2 readers on either side of a portal. Pointing into the portal, a pallet of 40 boxes of Caress soap. And the system, the test was to test how well the readers could read these 40 boxes, despite interference, noisy environments. And on the right, you can see a Metro pallet testing. That's actually in the Metro facility. That's a motorized sled. You put pallets on that sled, up to big, huge pallets that are really heavy, run them through the simulated dock door at a variety of different speeds, and check readability. So these were the use cases, but they really didn't go anywhere. So let's fast forward to today. Today, the tag market, again using tags as a proxy for the market growth, is growing about 35% year over year. In 2013, the market consumed somewhere between 3 and 3.3 billion UHF RFID tags. Projections are in 2014, the market will consume between 4 and 4.5 billion UHF RFID tags, and the growth is actually accelerating. And it is item-level tagging that's fueling the resurgence. It's tagging individual items, not pallets, not cases. Sure, sometimes we tag pallets and cases too, but it's really all about tagging items. I've got a couple of use cases here. I'll have time to go through maybe 1 or 2 of them. I'm going to start up on the left, medical inventory. This is a medical cabinet made by a company called Terso, and typically used in dental offices. And in this particular case, all the medical supplies inside the cabinet are tagged. There's a reader inside the cabinet. Say, I'm Nurse Chris. There's a procedure that's going to happen. I come up to the cabinet with my badge, apply the badge, cabinet opens. Now the cabinet knows that it's me, Nurse Chris, that actually opened the cabinet. Reach in, pull out an item, close the door. The reader inside the cabinet re-inventories the contents of the cabinet, knows that Nurse Chris took out whatever particular item, sends a GPRS message back to the manufacturer saying, Nurse Chris pulled this item out. You can bill the dentist's office. And oh, by the way, there's only 1 more of those items left in the cabinet, so you should go restock. Can also keep track of expiration dates on the products and basically notify when this cabinet needs to be restocked for the dental offices. So that's one simple case. Laundry management is for tracking laundry, hotels, hospitals, including going now into uniforms, police uniforms, military uniforms. Operational configuration to the right, the Coke machine, the Coke Freestyle, we'll talk about that in a minute. Brand protection, tagging pharmaceuticals, retail inventory, the big one. I'll talk more about retail inventory going forward. Customer service, what you see off to the right there is a Qantas bag tag. For their Qantas frequent flyers, it's a big tag about this big, goes on your bag. And as you come up to a Qantas desk in some airports, They can identify you as one of their premium frequent flyers and basically provide you special service. Race timing, the original actual item level tagging driver, where the items are people's shoes with the people in the shoes. Currently used, UHF is used pretty much exclusively in North America for tagging marathons, moving down into 10K races and college and high school races. Also big in Europe, moving to Japan. Race timing is a big application. Again, all these use cases are about tagging individual things, whether it's somebody's shoes for a race, a particular item of apparel, asset management, logistics, security, all these use cases. We're about tagging items now. And because we're tagging items, UHF passive RFID is dominating the market. So you see here a graph from Chainlink Research, 2013 where we were. This is the total tags consumed, including UHF RFID, battery assisted passive, HF NFC, and pretty much all the tag uses worldwide. You can see that the green, being UHF passive, is already the largest. And its growth rate will cause it to outstrip every other technology. It's growing at 5 times the rate of HF slash NFC. NFC is sort of a repackaged HF. And new markets and design-ins, because of the capabilities of UHF, because of the new Gen 2 V2 protocol, because of the price point, are going to prefer UHF by a wide margin. So people ask me, what is it about UHF RFID that causes it to be so dominant going forward, and why is NFC so much slower? So there's 3 answers to that question. The first one is read range. UHF RFID tags can be read at a range exceeding 10 meters, exceeding 30 feet. So if I want to inventory a bunch of items in this room, either with a handheld reader or an overhead reader, I can do it with one handheld walking around pretty quickly. I can do it with probably 2 overhead readers scanning the floor. The read range for NFC, typical read range is 10 centimeters, about 4 inches. The specified maximum read range is 20 centimeters, 8 inches. I can't do inventory. Furthermore, UHF Gen 2, as we'll see going forward, is capable of dealing with more than 10,000 tags in the field of view and inventorying at more than 1,000 tags per second. By contrast, HF NFC really is designed to read 1 tag at a time. Now, there are protocols that can read a lot more than 1, but none of them have the anti-collision properties, the ability to deal with large numbers of tags that UHF does. Why? Because the read range was short, so they never had to have that anti-collision capability. And the third reason that UHF dominates is cost. Even going in, the cost for UHF was lower because the protocol was simpler and because there were drivers to drive costs down. And the costs of UHF are dropping at a much more rapid rate than they are for NFC. So I believe these data, we see it in the volumes that are going into the market today. UHF RFID will dominate. 2 applications really stand out. I showed you the previous picture with all those kind of neat applications, and there's a whole bunch more I could go through. But 2 really stand out. One is retail apparel. Using tags on items of retail apparel today for inventory tracking and inventory accuracy. In a typical store that's properly run using UHF RFID on tag apparel items, retailers are reporting typical inventory accuracies, which are in the 65 to 75% range without RFID, moving to the 90 to 95% accuracy range with RFID. So retailers no longer have to guess about what's in their store. They know what's in their store. And they can make restocking decisions, ordering decisions based on data. Also, their stores are better stocked. Their inventory is lower, but the stores are better stocked. And the better stocking leads to a sales uplift. The sales uplift, depending on the retailer you talk to, ranges somewhere between about 5 and 12%. I know data from stores that are run very carefully, that have had third parties do the analysis, come in the store to see what the sales uplift really is. So the guys who are running the RFID system are not the ones determining the sales uplift. They bring a third party in. And at least 2 retailers that I know of who have done a very careful RFID implementation and have had third party analysis are reporting 12% sales uplift in the categories that are tagged. Furthermore, because retailers know what's in their store, they can begin thinking about omni-channel fulfillment. Fulfilling from a store. Somebody goes online and buys something, they can ship it from the store, and typically the store is closer to the consumer than their competitors, for example on Amazon, which has big distribution centers, but not so many of them. So retailers can begin thinking of using stores as warehouses for online fulfillment. Today, we're tagging apparel, but moving into sporting goods, shoes, jewelry, fragrances, tires, whole set of items. You can think of some of the use cases, like just think about tires for a second. If you go into a tire store and you need 4 tires and they have 3, what do? You don't buy 3 and go someplace else to get the 4th, you don't buy any. So retailers that sell tires need to have 4 in stock. When 1 gets purchased because somebody had a blowout, they need to order that 1 more, otherwise they have excess inventory, the 3 that don't sell. The second key use case is embedded RFID, something you probably may not have heard much about so far, but it's sort of a sleeper. It's a sleeper because today, UHF RFID tags are getting embedded into consumer electronics. I'll talk about some of the use cases coming up in sort of focused on these 2, the Coke Freestyle machine as well as the tablets, HP Envy tablets. I'll start by just saying that today, in Intel's reference design for Windows 8 tablets, there is an RFID IC built onto the printed circuit board. And that RFID IC connects to the microprocessor inside the tablet. We'll talk about that use case a little bit coming up. So, UHF RFID transforms retail apparel. Inventory management, as I said before, this being an American Apparel store, knowing what items are in your store. Point of sale. This is a Momove store in Brazil where you can go in, pick up a set of items, bring them over to, if I can find the laser, bring them over here, drop them in this little bin, which is about that deep. It's a reader in the bin, reads every single tag, says how many items are you buying? You hit however many, 5. It says I read 5 items, there's a match. Does automatic checkout right there. Loss prevention, as we'll talk about when we get to Gen 2 V2, UHRFID will become, over time, a very powerful paradigm for using loss prevention. You can use the same tag for inventory purposes, for sale purposes, and for loss prevention at a store exit. Customer experience, this is a New Balance store. You want to look at a shoe, you come in, you pick up the shoe, put it down over here, and a display comes up and says, this is particular information about that shoe. Try and induce you to buy it. And as, again, omni-channel fulfillment, this quote from the chief stores officer at Macy's, spent the last 153 years building warehouses, we just call them stores. Really, retailers want to use their stores, the stuff they have in their 4 walls, for more than just consumers coming in and buying there. And UHF RFID allows them to do so. So let's talk a little bit about embedded use case. This is the Coke Freestyle machine. The use case here sort of gets at what we're going to be talking about when we get to Gen 2 V2, which is authentication. These Freestyle machines have a bunch of syrup cartridges, lemon, lime, and orange, and all these different flavors. All the syrup cartridges look identical. Just these little black plastic cartridges with this highly concentrated syrup. Turns out, if you put the wrong syrup cartridge in a slot in the machine, if you put the orange and the lemon lime, the syrup is so concentrated that when it gets into the tubing, you can't get the flavor out. So they have to refurbish the machine. So inside this machine, there's 3 readers with little antennas over each of the spots where the syrup cartridges plug in. Each syrup cartridge has a tag. The tag identifies the flavor. It does other things too, which we don't have time to get into, but it identifies the flavor. So the machine needs to be restocked with orange. The person comes up to the cabinet and holds up an orange cartridge. A reader on the outside reads the orange cartridge, genuine Coke cartridge, opens the door. Little flashing LED says where to pull out the old cartridge. Guy pulls out the old one, puts in the new one. The reader checks it, says, yep, orange cartridge, that's right. Close the door, system's operational. Put in the wrong cartridge, doesn't work. Clever use case, but allows Coke to make sure the machines are operating properly, to know that the cartridges are genuine Coke, and even to track information about the cartridges over time. Also allows them to get use case information. They know how often people are using orange or lemon lime and other things in the machine. It can actually send that information back to Coke so they can do accurate restocking nationwide. So now let's talk about the embedded use case. I told you just a minute ago that Intel had put an RFID IC on the printed circuit board in the Atom-based tablet design. And pretty much, I'd say the vast majority of Windows 8 Atom-based tablets in the market today have that IC on the board. That IC is connected to the microprocessor inside the tablet. And in many of the designs also has an external antenna on the case. It's just built into the case. You don't really see it. And so there's a whole bunch of use cases. Let me just talk about one here, which is locked in transit. There's my error. Oops. Got it? Which is locked in transit. So in these tablets, each microprocessor has a unique key for that processor. Intel builds them that way. What the manufacturer of the tablet can do is put an activation code for the tablet in the RFID IC. So when the microprocessor boots up, it's going to run the tablet, it looks to the RFID IC and says, send me the activation code. The RFID IC sends the activation code, the processor checks it, says, yep, that's the right activation code, and operates. Absent that activation code, the tablet doesn't operate. Each tablet has its own unique activation code. So the manufacturer of these tablets, they build a tablet, they check it, it all works out okay. They erase the activation code from the RFID IC and they ship it. That tablet is now a brick. Will not do anything, doesn't work, somebody steals it, it's completely worthless. And because there's crypto enabled in the authentication process, cryptography, you can't spoof the activation code. The tablet goes to the retailer, let's say Best Buy in North America. Retailer can, when the tablet is inside the box, read the ID of the RFID tag using RFID, send information up to the web saying, I'm a legitimate Best Buy store, can you send me the activation code for this tablet? They get the activation code, then right through the box, without opening the box, write the activation code into the tablet. The tablet is now operational. Locked in transit is one use case. You can think of many others. You can think of the tablet actually having additional features. And at point of sale, the point of sale reader could actually say, by the way, do you want to upgrade the memory in that tablet and double the memory size? And they can, at point of sale, write a different activation code into the tablet to enable twice the amount of memory. So reduce SKU count. There's many use cases for embedded RFID. I say it's a sleeper because right now, the tags are going into electronic devices. Just the use cases haven't been rolled out yet in any significant way. It takes time from when you put a tag in it or when you build something new into an electronic product to actually get it rolled out in the market. But the products are going out and we're going to see these use cases proliferate. So the resurgence is going to accelerate. We can identify an item, we can do that today. We can configure an item, as I just talked about with the tablets. We got both of those. What else do we need? I believe we need two more things. We need to be able to locate an item. It's great that a retailer knows an item is in their store, but they really need to know where it is. Not where it is precisely, but know where it is to within human readable distances, this much. I can come up and say, oh yeah, it's over there. And if a consumer comes into a store and says, I want size whatever jeans, the system should be able to tell them in the future, go over there and find them. And authenticate an item. Know that an item is genuine, sort of the Coke machine example, but even more about authentication. Use the RFID tags to legitimately say an item is genuine. So let's talk about locating an item. Today when retailers do inventory in the store, they send a store employee out with a handheld reader. And the store employee goes around and around and, it takes maybe, for some of the big stores that I've seen, with maybe 10% of the items tagged, it'll take a well-trained employee about an hour to do the inventory. And they can get about 95% accuracy. There's always some they don't read because they miss some. I've done the checking myself, and I missed some, even though I did it very carefully. In fact, I missed an end cap that I didn't know to go look at. That model works today, and it actually helps retail stores in a big way today. We can get good inventory accuracy, checking with handhelds maybe twice a week. But going forward, what we really want is autonomous infrastructure, just stuff built into the store that can read tags continuously. So here's an example. This is an Impinj product called X-Array. You can see it mounted overhead in a mock store here. And it's on all the time. It provides real-time item location and movement. It's just continuously reading tags. And because it's continuously reading tags, it can find where they are. So the way the system works is it's actually like a radar. It can steer a beam around. It can look in different areas. Think of a radar on a military ship. The flat panels you see in some of those ships where the radar can look over here and look over here and look in different places as it steers a beam electrically. That's what X-Array does, is it steers a beam electrically as though it had a moving beacon, but there's no moving parts. But as it scans around, it can find tags in different locations and figure out where they are. So here you can see just a little mock-up of 9 tags placed on the floor. You can see each dot is a read. Over time, the X-ray can figure out where those tags are. And the centroid of these individual points is a pretty good indication where the thing is. And you can see the distance here. So this is plus or minus a half meter, so maybe a meter accuracy. A little more than 3 feet. It's good enough to know where items are on a floor. So this kind of idea of autonomous inventory over time is going to gradually replace employees going out and checking for the RFID tags. And even today, with X-rays mounted on a store, given the floor coverage they have, the cost of X-rays in a store is less than the cost of lighting or the cost of carpet. So I'd like to show you just a little picture so you can sort of see the thing. Here is a mock-up in just an open warehouse area, X-ray mounted overhead at 10.5 foot height, 3.2 meters, and there are tags just placed all over these pieces of foam on the floor. Just turned out to be easy to use foam. You can walk on it and it allowed a nice way to move the tags around. Again, just a demo. The tag will occupy a 12.2 by 13.5 meter space, 40 by 44 feet, which is shown over here. 3,264 tags. Each square you'll see here has 2 tags in it. And there's a video that we're going to show, which is just a 60-second video that will show in real time the system reading the tags. Fred, can you run it? There's no sound over, maybe I should be singing or something. But you can see right away, the thing's just scanning. It's just scanning. It's looking around, it's scanning a beam around. And it is rapidly inventorying these tags. You can see the 4 white posts, 1, 2, 3, 4, those being the posts here. In 30 seconds, it's already got more than 2,500 tags. And it will gradually fill in. Now, it's not going to get the other side of the posts, it's not going to get out in the corners, it doesn't have that reach. We're limited in the amount of power that we can transmit. But the key thing is, this overhead reader in 60 seconds can inventory the floor. Now you may say, yeah, but these tags are on the floor here, and that's not having tags on shelves, and I'll say, yes, that's true. So reading tagged items on shelves is more difficult. However, I've got all the time in the world. This was only a 60-second demo. Continuous reading, I will have ongoing opportunities to read those tags on shelves. And with the consumers in the store, moving items, picking up items, ruffling items, we'll get them. And in fact, tests of these kind of overhead reading system in stores show that they can read more tags than handheld inventory. Furthermore, they can get additional information. Consumers come into a store and pick up an item. They walk through the store. You get an idea of traffic in the store just from the items they picked up and moved. You're not tracking the people. You're tracking your items. And you can make heat maps of a store just based on where people are walking, carrying items that they've picked up. So the power of this technology is really incredible. Not only does it tell you about the tags, it tells you how your store is doing, what's moving, what's not moving, what's going to changing rooms. It's just an incredibly bright future as we think about deploying UHF RFID broadly to allow retailers to inventory and track their items. The second case, I said we needed 2 things. We needed autonomous inventory and authentication. So I want to talk the second one, which is authentication, which will lead us into a discussion of Gen 2 V2. So we want to know what inventory we have. We want to do it autonomously. And in many use cases, we also want to authenticate the tag, and by implication, the item to which the tag is attached as genuine. So this is kind of a fun example. I just wanted to do something outside of retail inventory and outside things most of you have seen, so I decided to show an example of tagging trucks. Now, you may be surprised by some of these data. Convenience and fraud is 5.8%, or 5% of sales today are $1.8 billion. So truckers who drive up to a trucking station, they have a credit card, they fill up their truck, and they fill up their friend's truck. Their friend then gives them some money in return, and there's fraud. The way that QuickQ solved this problem working with Love's is they put a tag on the truck. And there's a reader overhead in the filling station. Truck pulls in, reader reads the tag, sends an information to the network, the owner of the truck, the owner of the truck authorizes the pump, to put in a certain amount of gas based on how much gas the truck should have needed to get from the point it was moving to the point it got to. And going forward, they're using one of those tags that we put in the tablet that connects to the processor. They're putting that in the truck and connecting it to the CAN bus in the truck. So it actually ties into the truck. So not only can they say, this truck arrived, but they can say, get the fuel gauge information. They can get information on whether there's any alerts, any problems with the truck. They can get the distance traveled. They can get all this information just as the trucker pulls up. And actually, it's a benefit for the trucker too. They just pull up, they just pump gas. They don't have to do anything else. There's no receipts, nothing. It's just all taken care of automatically. So there's real power in these applications. And this trucking one, I think I heard a statistic, don't take my word for this, but something to the extent of 40% of fuel sales for diesel trucks in North America are using RFID in this way. I haven't corroborated that number, but that's what the folks doing the system told me. So authentication was the second. There's more to do with authentication. There's more that we can do. And it was the recognition that there's more we can do with authentication that led us to begin developing the Gen 2 V2 protocol. So the protocol effort actually started back in 2007 with the development within EPC Global of a group called the Electronic Article Surveillance Joint Requirements Group, which was a collection of more than 50 retailers that came up with requirements for using RFID for loss prevention. There was then the Tag Alteration Joint Requirements Group and the Consumer Electronics Group, and they all put in requirements for what they needed to enhance the Gen 2 protocol. And what we did was we created UHF Gen 2 version 2. It's actually, to be precise, version 2.0.0. It is a backward compatible extension to Gen 2 version 1.2.0. What backward compatible means is that if I have a legacy reader, I can read one of the new tags. Doesn't mean I'll implement all the cool new features, but I can still inventory it. If I have a new reader, I can inventory an old tag, a legacy tag. There's complete backwards compatibility. What we did is we layered the new features on top. It's a joint effort between GS1 EPC Global and ISO. I'll talk about that in a minute, but there was too much work to be done. And GS1 EPC Global had expertise about the protocol. ISO had expertise about the security side, so that's how we split things. We said, okay, GS1 EPC Global will do the protocol, ISO will do the security, and we'll make sure that the two mesh together. And it addresses requirements for more than 100 end users. There are 5 key use cases, or let's call it 5 key innovations in the protocol. 1, protecting consumer privacy. 2, using a tag for loss prevention. 3, storing product information in a tag. 4, restricting access to this stored information to only authorized users. And 5, authenticating a tagged item as genuine. It's a lot of stuff. What we recognize is if we put all the stuff in one tag, we'd have a big tag. It would cost too much. So all the new features are optional. And the protocol is constructed so that bare bones tags that have none of these new features can coexist with full-featured or partially featured tags in the field. The model is the tags will have some subset of the features. What subset they have is up to the tag manufacturer based on the market demands, based on your demands. The readers will implement the superset. So readers can talk to any tags with all these different features. The readers are smart, they're the expensive things, but there's not as many of them. The tags will have a mix of features, whatever is needed, and that way we can drive the cost down to be the minimum cost for the particular application. So let's go a little bit of an overview, and then I'll dive down into the 5 features. The way the Gen 2 protocol operates today, Gen 2 version 1.2.0, is as follows. I'm a reader, you're the tags. I can select on a subpopulation of tags. Say I select on all boxes of tissue or something that are out in the field. I send a select command and I say, I only want tags that have these particular criteria to respond. I don't have to send a select, it's optional, but the first thing I can do is select population. That population is selected. Now I start inventorying. One by one, I inventory each tag in the field. There's an anti-collision protocol that allows me to get the tags one at a time. In a random order, but I get them one at a time. I get each tag's EPC. I'm the reader, I get each tag's EPC, and then I tell that tag, okay, thank you, you gave me your EPC, please go away for now, I need to inventory your friends. For each tag that I inventory, I have the option of accessing it. Today, in Gen 2 version 1.2.0, access means I can read other portions of tag memory, I can write tag memory, I can lock tag memory, or I can kill the tag. What we did in Gen 2 version 1.2, or Gen 2 version 2.0.0 is we expanded access. We didn't touch select, we didn't touch inventory. We expanded access to add 5 things. Anti-counterfeiting, authenticate the tag as genuine cryptographically so it's not spoofable. Security, add security to the tag so that I can actually modify tag information securely. The tag can actually require that I, as a reader, authenticate myself to the tag before it will let me modify its information. Files and file management. I can create files, I can partition memory into files, and I can assign access privileges to those files. So there's a very simple file system. I'll get to it in a minute, but just think about your computer. When you log onto your computer, you have access to some files on your computer. You may not have access to all of them. Somebody else logs onto your computer, they may have access to a different set of files. You may give your friend read privileges to some files and no access to other files. We have that same concept in Gen 2 v2. There are files, and there can be files in the tag. Files have access privileges depending on the user. Untraceability is hiding data to protect consumer privacy, and loss prevention is using a tag for EAS. So I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. So anti-counterfeiting, the business need. There's a lot of business needs for anti-counterfeiting. I thought I'd put up a fun one, which is NASCAR, given that I'm in Atlanta. So today, NASCAR uses RFID tags for tagging the tires for NASCAR races as well as chassis. Tires are tagged by the manufacturer, and to ensure tire compliance, by the way, there's never any cheating in car racing, in Formula One or anything else, NASCAR. So maybe this is unnecessary, but just in case, you know, they tag all the tires. And as they bring the tires into the paddock area, there's readers in a portal that actually read the tires. 4 tires coming in, 4 tags read, right tags, right manufacturer codes, good. It's only tires that get through the door. There's a future opportunity, however, which is to authenticate the tags to increase the confidence that the certification is genuine. So the way we do authentication today is on the left. Reader says, hello tag, I'm going to inventory you. The tag responds with its EPC. Reader then says, I want to read your TID, your tag identifier. Tag sends back a unique number that was programmed by the tag manufacturer into the tag. The idea here is that each tag manufacturer programs unique numbers. Bad guys can't spoof those tags, so the system is reasonably secure. And it is reasonably secure, but not strictly secure. It's not strictly secure because nothing says that a bad guy can't counterfeit the tags, and I know there are companies in parts of the world that are trying to counterfeit tags. They haven't succeeded so far, but they are trying. And if you really know something about the protocol, you can actually make a box, an emulator, that can spoof a tag. I can make a box look like a tag, and so when somebody's pushing something through a portal, I can have the box override the tag and actually report, yeah, I'm genuine, whereas the thing isn't. So we're not strictly secure. Going forward in Gen 2 v2, the tag will have a secret key, something that is not readable by anybody but is programmed into the tag, typically at the time of manufacture. Reader will have access to that key, typically from the network. Reader will read the tag, and then it'll send a challenge to the tag, a big, long, random number. It says, I challenge you with this big, long, random number. The tag will say, okay, I'm going to add another random number to that, your random number, and now I get this even bigger random number. It then encrypts that random number with a cryptographic algorithm using the key, sends it back to the reader. The reader, knowing the key, can decrypt that message that came back. And if the right random came back, I sent this big random over, I got a random in reply, and I decrypted it, and it's the same thing I sent, I know that tag's genuine. Only a tag with a legitimate key could have encrypted it that way. And that cryptographic algorithm, by definition, that's the whole point of cryptography, is that it's irreversible. So bad guys can't spoof it. And because the messages that go over the air are different every time, a different random going forward, a different random coming back, and the size of the random is so big that if you did one authentication every millisecond, you would have had to start at the beginning of the universe in order to have a chance of breaking one of these things. So consequently, we can have what turns out to be fairly simple, an 80-bit key in the tag, a simple crypto algorithm that can actually allow cryptographic authentication. Second one, security, business need. There's a whole bunch of business needs for security. Again, I put up a little bit of a fun one. Theirs is a real use case today for refugees coming into Italy. They have no papers, they've got nothing, right? So when they're picked up, they actually get tagged with the RFID tag just for identification and transportation, so that for refugee management purposes, the Italian authorities, for the period of time where they're transporting these refugees, know who they are. Future opportunity here is to store some data securely in a tag. In the same way, for example, that your passports have your sensitive, secure information inside them. Your fingerprints and a picture of you stored in the tag, cryptographically secure. So, today, what we have in memory, the way we secure memory today in Gen 2 version 1.2.0 is we lock it. We write something and we lock it. And the original idea for UHF Gen 2 is what's going to replace barcodes. So why would you want to hide the barcode? So we don't hide anything, at least not in the protocol. There are proprietary implementations of tags that allow you to hide things, but the protocol says memory is always visible. So you can lock the memory, but you can't hide it. In Gen 2 version 2, user memory has read, write, and lock access privileges, and memory access is by privilege. So I need to authenticate myself to the tag using that same crypto mechanism for the tag to say, oh, you're genuine, okay, I will allow you to see the information in the tag. In the same way as when you come up with a passport, you try and read your own passport, the tag in it, you can't get the stuff in there, but you bring it to the immigration official who has the right information, they can actually get the information in your passport. We can do the same thing in our tags. Third area that we added was files, as I mentioned before. Again, kind of another fun case. This is Eurocopter. Turns out that there are more than 100 tagged items inside these helicopters, and there's readers inside the helicopters. The readers read the tags all the time. And because the system knows when the helicopter's flying, they can actually keep track of the flight hours for every single tagged item in the helicopter. They track each aircraft part's flight hours, reduces labor by 15%, and reduces maintenance time because they know when to do the maintenance. They don't have to check for each item individually with some paperwork and everything. The information is stored in the readers itself. The future opportunity here is to securely track aircraft parts and part sharing for passenger airlines. Again, just another example of a use case. This use case was pushed by Boeing. But to put this information in a tag requires secure data and secure access privileges. So think of the use case. I've got two airlines. They're in some faraway facility. Airline number 1, United, has a part. Airline number 2, American, needs that part. There is part sharing. Same airplane, United will transfer the part to American. The information typically needs to be on the part. It's going to be, according to the ATA 2000 spec, the item information is in the tag that will move with the part. Because in many of these remote, especially remote locations, there's not network access to tell you about that specific part. But United doesn't want to share its confidential information with American. So user memory gets partitioned into files. United will have access to certain portions of memory, will give American access to certain portions, and American will have access to their own portions of memory. So the idea, it looks like this. Today, in Gen 2 version 1.2.0, we have a single file in user memory. It's one big flat file. It's like having a computer with one file and just continuously writing more information into it. It gets to be a mess after a while. In Gen 2 version 2, user memory can be partitioned into multiple files. The number of files is up to the tag manufacturer, and each file can have access privileges. The privileges are no access, so United gives American no access to read a particular file, read access, read-write access, or read, write, and lock access. Just in a very simplified version of the file system in your computer. You can build tags with no user memory, 1 file, 10 files, lots of user memory. The use cases will drive the size of the memory and the amount of files on the tags. And consumer privacy, business need here, especially coming from the EU, was to put capabilities in the tag to address consumer privacy. So back in 2004, the privacy pains were really there. So this is an original cartoon from back in 2004, and we were all fighting these privacy issues. And back then, the solution to privacy was to kill a tag. Those privacy concerns have mostly abated since 2004. We don't hear nearly as much about RFID and privacy as today as we did back then, but still there are lingering concerns, and you can sort of see it here. This is Metro in 2008, just one of the pictures that I had, addressing consumer privacy with education, ability to remove tags, and filing a privacy impact assessment in the EU for their pilot. So what do we do in Gen 2 V2 for consumer privacy? Today, in version 1.2.0, tag memory is organized as EPC memory, where the EPC is stored, TID memory, where the tag ID is stored, and user memory. And they're all visible. So the solution for privacy back then was kill the tag. That's kind of a brute force way of getting privacy. What we did in Gen 2 version 2.0 was we have the ability to hide portions of the memory. Memory remains the same, but we can hide user memory. A consumer at point of sale can say, keep the tag alive, hide user memory, hide all that information. Or hide user memory and the serial number in the TID. Or hide user memory, the serial number in the TID, and part of the EPC, maybe the unique serialization, or maybe all of it. Retailers will determine what they offer to consumers, and there's a mix and match here. The retailer can choose to hide different parts of the tag memory. And you can think of various models. Maybe I come into the store, I have my little PIN code, I type it in, they hide the memory, and it's only resurrectable when I type in my PIN code again. I want to return the item, I bring it back to the store, type in my PIN code, they can unhide memory and put the item back on the shelf. That model is supported in the tag, as well as reducing the tag's read range at point of sale, or doing both. Finally, the last use case was loss prevention. We look at authentication. I talked about authentication a little while ago. Authentication is a huge problem. International Chamber of Commerce expects the value of counterfeit goods to exceed $1.7 trillion globally by 2015. Retail theft is next, averaging 1.4% of sales globally, or $112 billion in 2013. So loss prevention for Gen 2 V2 was, if you look at what we've got today, before the advent of the protocol, retailers use a database. They have a tag. At point of sale, that tag's EPC goes into a database. The database indicates the item is sold. You walk out of the store with a tagged item, check the database, sold, don't sound an alarm. The problem is in very large stores, or stores in which the server is not in the store, the server is in headquarters. The database is too slow to access in real time to know if the item is being sold. So what we did in Gen 2 V2 was we put the concept of a store code and a sold code in the tag. So when a retailer gets an item, let's say Walmart, they put a store code in it that says Walmart. It always says that. It's permanently locked into the tag. At point of sale, you write a sold code. The sold code can be 1 bit. It can be 32 bits. It can be anything in between. It can be a sold code of the day. It can be a cryptographic hash. It's up to the retailer what they use for a sold code. Regardless, as the consumer is leaving the store with the item, they execute select on Walmart tags. Only Walmart tags respond. The Walmart tags respond, but my driver's license doesn't. The tags that respond, Walmart then goes and checks the sold code. The sold code is genuine, legitimate, the item sold. If it's not, the item isn't sold. In this particular way of using RFID with a store code and a sold code, the reason I used Walmart as an example is because it was Walmart who's the one that actually proposed this idea and was a key proponent for it. But there's many other retailers who were invested in the same use case or same way of using RFID for loss prevention. So that covers our 5 use cases. I'll just close here by saying the status of the protocol is GS1 EPC Global ratified it on October 30th of last year. It is done. When we finish a protocol, we submit it to ISO for a stamp of standardization to make it truly a worldwide standard, and that process is going forward quickly now. At the same time, ISO is ratifying the security protocols that will go in and allow us to do the authentication or the security. ISO will ratify the first 2 security algorithms first half of this year, probably within the next 2 or 3 months. The ISO process takes a while to publish. They will probably publish by 3rd or 4th quarter this year. And you will see tags, readers, and the infrastructure behind it operational in sometime next year. And with that, there's time for any questions. I probably have time maybe to take 1 or 2.
Absolutely. Questions from the audience? It's very, Miguel. Microphone.
Chris, what could happen to accelerate the adoption of the new tag or even the existing version of EPC?
So what could happen, the question is what could happen to accelerate adoption? I could say a lot of things could happen to accelerate adoption. Everybody use more tags. So it depends on the time frame that we're looking at. If I look out, I guess I could give many different answers, but I'm going to give an answer that looks out, for example, over a 3-year horizon. And if I look out over a 3-year horizon, I think the dominant thing that can happen to drive UHF RFID in the market would be consumers using RFID. And having UHF RFID readers in my phone, which is going to happen in that time frame. And then I, as a consumer, can buy the tagged items in a store. Say I want to buy a pair of jeans that's a certain type. You know, I check online, store X has them nearby. Maybe I can get a store map. I go into the store, I put my phone into Geiger counter mode. By the way, the typical read range people want for these tags for phones is about 2 meters, 6 feet. Walk around, beep, it's over here. I pick up the item. Even more, I could get some information on the item. Yeah, that's the one I want. Hit buy. Send a buy message up to the network. Network comes down with that authorization code for sale. Write it into the tag. Item's now sold to me, that particular item. I did the whole thing with my phone. Now that's way out, but readers and phones will make a huge difference because once consumers start using the tags, we're going to see an explosion.
But are already plans in the major mobile manufacturers to include the EPC tags or EPC readers? And if not, is there, I mean, what could we do as an organization with so many stakeholders to accelerate that?
So some of the phone manufacturers are already including tags in the phones for some of the locked-in-transit use cases and other use cases that I described. There are multiple phone manufacturers actively looking at putting readers into the phone. It turns out it's not an easy thing to do because we transmit 1 watt of power and everything. So there's a lot of interest right now. And what we could actually do is sort of raise the awareness at these manufacturers and at retailers of the use case, the value proposition of consumers being able to interact with the tags. Because the phone manufacturers will put something into the phone when there's a value proposition for it. So we really need to tell them, here's the value proposition. You guys put a reader in your phones, and it's going to significantly enhance the value of the phones and the value to the network, because when I start looking for items, I'm sending data over the network. When I buy an item using my phone, I'm sending data over the network. When I buy it, I'm actually using the network for the purchase. So I think it's just an education right now. There's no technical impediments that are preventing us.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I have a question. It's very interesting that you say that consumers might drive RFID and UHF. Sorry. Okay. A few years ago, there were all these innovations about the smart changing room and magic mirrors, where you'd expect the consumer to interact with RFID, and that didn't pick up. So why would the mobile phone pick up and those applications were not as, I don't know, they didn't really pick up and they were quite interesting ideas?
Okay, so I'm going to give an answer that's a little bit simplistic, and please don't take it that way, but there were a lot of ideas back in the early days about magic mirrors. You come up to a mirror with a tagged item and it can tell you about the item. The issue back then with those magic mirrors is the number of items that were tagged in a store was astronomically small. We were all doing pilots with 1 store and a couple of tagged items. Now the rollouts are real. There's actually real tagged items in stores. And those magic mirror applications that we saw back then are actually coming back. I saw a statistic from one retailer in a pilot store that consumers who picked up an item and went in front of a magic mirror were more than 60% more likely to buy the item than a consumer that didn't go to the magic mirror with the item. Now maybe that's self-selecting, maybe they were already convinced that they were going to buy it, but I suspect there's a mix of both, that actually going to the mirror, seeing information about that item actually helps drive the purchase. And even in some use cases, I saw someone comes up to a mirror and they can say, I want to see what I look like in New York wearing this whatever I just picked up. And it'll show you a New York background and here's me. Now, by the way, that's not me, you know. But those use cases for engaging with consumers are picking up again because there are now tagged items in stores and there's a value proposition. So I think my answer is extending the readers to phones will further extend the value proposition that, although we identified in the past, it didn't materialize because the items weren't tagged.
One more question.
Okay, one more question?
Yeah. It's more like a technical question. I just wonder how much will the security algorithm affect the reading cycle time?
The question is, how much will the security algorithm affect the reading cycle time? The answer depends on the algorithm that the various suppliers choose. Let me go back. If I look at this particular algorithm here, which is an ISO standard, ISO 29192-2, the time to do an authentication will be measured in a couple of milliseconds, let's say 2 to 3 milliseconds. So for all practical purposes, if you're inventorying tags at 200 or 300 tags per second, you may see a couple 20-30% reduction, but it won't be huge. Now, if you use a much heavier algorithm like AES, Electronic Advanced Encryption Standard, it gets a little bit slower, but there are crypto algorithms today that are very lightweight and very fast, where I truly believe that we will be able to not impact a tag's read range. You'll be able to authenticate the tags out to 10-meter read range and not significantly degrade the time required to inventory a tag. And just to say a tiny bit more on that, one of the key use cases going forward, although we didn't anticipate it back when we started work on the protocol, was to use UHF RFID in tolling. So you need to basically have a car coming up at 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour, and be able to interrogate the tag and authenticate the tag as genuine. That's a driver. And so the tag manufacturers are actually building their silicon so that silicon can handle that use case, which I think is enough of a driver, enough of a push to have fast authentication that the authentication time is not going to impact other use cases in the market.
Chris, thank you. Fantastic. I would just like to add on to Steve's comments very briefly. This was a very difficult endeavor for GSMP, and they had about 6 roadblocks. So I invited them to Princeton to facilitate a session, and I got up in front of this group of technology gurus and said, my name is Bob Bersani, and my technical experience in this space is that I can tell the difference between a silicon chip and a potato chip. And I got to tell you, if it wasn't for Chris, the guidance and support that he gave me, Mark Fry, working with us, I truly believe this would still be in a GSMP work group. So there's a lot to be said for Chris's efforts and the fact that it's ratified standard today, and I thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to give a very brief, high-level overview of best in class and try and tie it back to the earlier presentations on Miguel with our strategy. And if you look at what we need to deliver for best in class, it really is about relevance. If you think about our more successful efforts, global product packaging sustainability, digital coupon, any of those initiatives, we really had no problems in seeding groups and getting the work done in an efficient manner because it was relevant. So what we're trying to do is ensure that we have a way to measure the relevance of something before it becomes actionable by GSMP. Today, a lot of times, relevance is established when we do a call to action, and that really is too late. We want to do a lot of the work up front. So what do we need to address in best in class? First, is the community aware of what we're doing? So we're working with various publications to partner with to announce the things that we're doing in the form of a call to action to cast the net much wider. Strong stakeholder commitment. We're looking at changes, we're referring to them as entrance criteria. Before it gets into GSMP, we need to identify who the stakeholders are, who's committed. We need to identify the participants up front, who's going to participate. We need to identify what types of participation. And what can we do internally to ensure success? We need to continue an inherent continuous improvement, GSMP efficiency, and we need to make the engagement of GSMP as easy as possible. These are new models of interaction with GSMP that we're developing, that we're going to introduce, because we know not all companies can assign people to a GSMP work group. We believe that when we address all of these areas of opportunity, That's going to support one of the main pillars of our GS1 strategy, and that is adoption. If it's relevant, if it's done well, it will be adopted. So that's really a very high-level overview. People say, well, what's best in class? Best in class is addressing those areas that we need to address to ensure that what we're doing is relevant. Because if it's relevant, GSMP is a great process. I believe we did GPPS in 3 months. We did the digital coupon standard and solution in 10 months. So if it's relevant, they will come. And I will be giving talks throughout the week in much greater detail on best in class. But if you're interested in learning more, please come and see me. And if you'd like to get involved in some of the work groups that we have, we'd be more than happy to have you. The big three are the entrance criteria and adoption forecasts. And this is where we're going to establish relevance. We're going to identify that criteria. I think the big change here is we're going to ask for adoption forecasts in the beginning of initiative. That's going to be very difficult, but again, you've heard this in prior presentations. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So in the beginning, we're going to try and develop adoption forecasts. We understand that when a standard comes online, it may take a year to reach penetration, it may take 3 years. We want to build that up front so that a year after the standard is ratified, we will put out survey type information that gauges the adoption. And that will close the loop of relevance. If we've done all our homework up front, we've delivered it, did they adopt it? And we are going to start reporting on adoption to the various boards, committees, and all of the GS1 community. Very tough, but we need to tackle that problem. Participation. We're working on MO and industry models. We're going to have 3 levels of participation. The first one is called represented. That's where organizations are represented by their member organizations in GSMP. Direct, which is the preferred method, where industry participates in the GSMP work group, which is supported today. And distributed. We're going to support distributed GSMP work groups, and that will help us tackle many of the challenges with language, time zones, so on and so forth. So we're really expanding the participation capabilities within GSMP. Again, if you have any questions, you'd like to get involved, please see me during the week, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you further about it. Key accomplishments. This is the first time we've all met since the end of the year, and I just wanted to show you what you were able to accomplish. The GSMP community, 9 new standards or publications were completed in the calendar year 2013, and 63 updates, improvements to GS1 standards. I think you should give yourselves a round of applause. We've had a great year. For the 42 newcomers that are here for this event, this is what you can look forward to accomplishing within GSMP and GS1. Very important, we have an inherent continuous improvement within GSMP, and we take it very seriously. The surveys are very, very important, and I think for those of you that have been to several of our events now, I hope that you see the improvements that we make as we go forward, and the surveys are critical to identify areas of opportunity for us to improve and make this as valuable an investment as we can. Because we understand that your time is very valuable, and we value that, and we appreciate it. So please take the time to fill out the surveys. And save the date. The next GS1 Standards event will be in Rome, Italy, from October 6th to October 10th, and we hope to see you all there and spread the GSMP word. Let's get the community energized, as many people as we can. Is the video next, Eileen? I think next, okay. We've had a really good year, but we need to do better. We need to get more efficient, more effective. I think you've seen in all of the presentations, the rate of change continues to increase. So we've developed some materials for you to use, you to share in your communities to communicate the value of participating within GSMP. And you can roll that now.
have to be able to give your input into the process. That interaction with other people and getting different people's opinions about a way a standard should be.
I would say do it. Definitely do it. Do not hesitate. There is so much to gain from it.
There's a fairly well-organized way of bringing people together and being a platform for discussion and consensus.
This is an area which is of very, very high interest, and the opportunity of learning, sharing experiences, and influencing the future.
Because we're competitors, actually we have very similar problems. Daring to share those, the parts of it that are appropriate for creating a common standard, it creates momentum and it creates the possibilities of solutions.
We're working with the biggest companies, the biggest countries, most active participants in the world, and they're driving the future of standards. If you want to be there and influence that, this is the place to be at GS1.
I think that the typical people at R, people that understand both business and technical aspects.
There are a number of different groups. There are business people who understand how their business operations work and what their business priorities are, how they relate and talk to consumers, how consumers talk to them, how their own supply chains run.
And this is available to all. I believe it's posted on our website, the MO Zone, and we encourage you to share the GSMP experience with your communities. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We have our networking dinner tonight. We're to meet in the lobby at 6:40, and we'll be taking the bus coaches over to the Coca-Cola Museum, and we thank Coca-Cola very much for sponsoring this event. And with that being said, I'd like to thank the GSMP community for everything that you've done this year, and I'd like to thank you for everything that you're going to accomplish next year.